Welcome back to Rolando Estacado. My name is Rolando, and today we're going to be covering the overhaul Mohara flow as I learned it from my father, who was a student of Felicissimo Dizon. I'm going to be sharing this with you and a little more broadly because the goal of this is to cover the estacado progression of learning and development with practically any weapons methodology. So the first part of it is going to be flow. So whenever you're learning any sort of martial art, you want to flow with the movements first so that you understand its overall biomechanics so that you're highly efficient. The second one is to relate, meaning you are now with your partner, you're moving with your partner, and as you feed your partner, you start to go into this dialogue of what is receiver and feeder. So you have shidashi and uchidashi in Japanese swordsmanship. You have the uke, the receiver, in Japanese martial arts like judo, but also in the Sayak methodology, you hear receiver and feeder. So once you move from the flow methodology, where you are with the primary emphasis on efficiency in biomechanics and technique, you now start to go into the dialogue between receiver and feeder. Once you are in that phase of your training, you start to experience the art in a completely different context. And that context is you are now dealing with something external. You are now dealing with an external angle, an external force. You now start to become familiar with concepts like distance, angulation, position. And that's what the second phase of training is. It's called relating. You're relating with a partner. And a little note on this, a martial flow, let's say a Mohara martial flow, is really mostly a form of health and wellness when you're training solo. It becomes a weapons art and it becomes a combative martial art when you are now facing an opponent. In other words, it's all cool and healthy until someone gets in range. So it becomes a combative art only when somebody decides to get in range. Last but not least is power. And when you're looking at power, the development of power, you're looking at the combination of all the things that you learned in flowing, which is biomechanics, efficiency, proper breathing, proper posture, but you are now also combining that with what you learned in your dialogue relative practices, which is with your partner. You're looking at distance, angulation, timing, attribute, and position. By the time you get to power, you're now dealing with intention, you're now dealing with speed, a different kind of efficiency, but also impact redistribution, because as you generate force going out, you also have to deal with the reverberation going through your body. So how you redirect that, especially if you're hitting a very resistant target, like if you're hitting tar tires or a punching bag, in order for you to remain absolutely healthy using these as impact targets, you want to be able to do so in such a way so that your joints don't suffer throughout the years of practice. So this is where the power development is. But there's another context wherein I discuss power, wherein you now start to experience your ability to generate force. And when you start to understand how you generate force, you also understand and respect your capability to generate both creative force and destructive force. And this is not just power in the physical sense, but also empowerment in that you are now using your martial learning and development as a way to better understand yourself, therefore better empower yourself. So without further ado, this is the Mohara Flow series. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Whether you know it or not, believe it or not, you're ready for this flow. You've been preparing for this flow. Does this look familiar to you? This is the setup for Kabilaan. You've been watching the videos. You've been training your whole life. You're ready for this. It should look familiar, and you are ready. As you move freely, breathe easily, and before you know it, you find yourself in that position to switch your hand to Kabilaan. And then you find yourself in another position. Does this look familiar? Are you remembering? If you've been paying attention to the videos, you've been set up for success. Does this look familiar? Are you remembering? Is your brain starting to put it together? Are you connecting the movements? Are you starting to flow? The goal of flowing and moving in Mohara is not just to connect your movements, but how connected movements help your mind to layer these strategies together as one fluid offense and defense. It should start to look familiar. It should start to feel familiar as you start to become one with this new kind of practice that Felicissimo Dizon has prepared himself and his students for these advanced methodologies. What you're really doing is you're not just flowing with your body, you're flowing with your mind. As you commit yourself to this practice and you start to flow, your body starts to remember what those 4 strategies are. And those 4 strategies all of a sudden start to come together. They are no longer strategies. They are one practice. This is your Mohara. This is your new practice.